1 minute.
Might want to turn that off unless you're.
Yeah, John said that he would do that, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do that.
Good morning. I'd like to bring the monthly work session, November 17th, 2020, to order. We have at our dais now our two newest school board members who were sworn in almost an hour ago now, Mr. Tom Edwards. Wave, say hi, because they can see you, and Karen Rose. Welcome to the board. Dr. Asplin, do you want to call someone up on the elementary, secondary data?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. The first item that we have for our workshop today is our elementary and secondary data. As you know, we progress monitor all throughout the year, and at the beginning of the year, we begin with a diagnostic test that we analyze, and that helps our teachers, and it helps inform their instruction as they create lesson plans and so forth. And so first of all, I'd like to ask Dr. Kingsley to come up, and as she will introduce her curriculum team as we go through our progress monitoring and our diagnostics up to this point.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Ms. Rose, Mr. Edwards. So our team has really worked hard to share a lot of information with you, so I hope you enjoy it and give them a chance to share the information and ask questions later. Okay, just kidding. So first up is Chris Renoff and then Steve Cantis, and they will introduce the incredible four. So I was going to say the triple, but no, you're the quadruple effort there.
Good morning, school board members, superintendent. We're really very happy to be here with you today to share some beginning of the year data with you. In just a moment, our curriculum directors will be sharing with you beginning of the year assessment data, but also our strategic response to that data. First off, our elementary curriculum director, Kelly Ellington, and our elementary instructional and intervention specialist, Amy Beachy, will review iReady AP1 diagnostic data at the elementary level. Then our middle school curriculum director, Sue Meckler, will share iReady AP1 diagnostic data and acceleration data at the middle school level. And lastly, our high school curriculum director, Catherine Kokosa, will share benchmark data, Achieve 3000 results, and acceleration data with you as well.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I appreciate it, and thank you for allowing us to present the data here. And welcome to Karen to the school board. Tom, welcome to the school board, and we look forward to working with you also. So when we talk about data, there's a lot of data out there, and the idea is to get that data organized in a way that is useful for ultimately the end user, which is the teachers. And so when you talk about organizing the data, we try to organize around an essential question or ask those important questions that will help us develop strategies for building that data, and we call it data literacy in many ways. So some of the questions we consider when we're looking at the data is, what are our successes? You always want to start with success. In Sarasota County, we have a lot of successes. Over the years, we've been very successful, but we always want to take that success and build off of it. And then we want to look at trends. What trends are we noticing year over year? What other data can we consider when we look at the beginning of year data? Is there other data to support it, so you're not just using one data point that may, in fact, somehow not be as accurate as you would want it to be? So if you can support that with additional data, that's always good. And then ultimately, we want to talk about what resources we will use, how we will monitor progress along the way. And as you develop goals, you want students part of that process and families to be part of that process. And I think that's an area we're getting better and better at is including the student and the parent in that goal-setting process. So as we think about these questions, one of the areas that we talk about administrators, there's so much data. You could spend forever on data. And some of it is extremely relevant. Other parts of it are not as relevant, but you just can't spend all your time on data. So the idea would be we encourage our principals look at a good balance about evaluating, examining data, but then it's all about what are we doing about the data? What kind of strategies are we implementing to make sure that we are being successful? I think it's an area with our curriculum teams, and I'm going to tell you these 3 and 4 with Amy are amazing at identifying the right data, identifying the right assessments, and making sure that our teachers are getting usable data in their hands and not just overwhelming them with all kinds of data. But the idea would be that we spend a amount of time on that data, but the majority of our time is going to be spent on developing strategies and listening to everybody as we develop a plan around those strategies. So I'm excited about today, the opportunity. It's going to look a little different at high school than it will at elementary and middle because of the type of data that we use at the secondary level. We have FSA testing around algebra and geometry and biology and U.S. history, and in middle school and elementary, we have that really strong iReady data that's used around the state. So we have great state comparisons and national comparisons now that Laura, Dr. Kingsley, and we have pushed really hard to get that data. So we're going to turn it over to the experts and get out of their way, and I think we're going to start with elementary. Thank you very much.
And coming up again is Kelly Ellington, our Director of Curriculum at the elementary level, and our Intervention and Instructional Specialist, Amy Beachy.
Good afternoon, or good morning, everyone. I think we're still in the morning. So I think our slides were showing a second ago. Hopefully they will be back up. We're going to start with our first reading slide, and it would be slide 4 for you in your presentations. I'm not going to be able to see if the clicker is working unless we see the slides, so hopefully they'll come up, but hopefully you all are on your right page there. There we go. Okay. Perfect. All right, so this slide is showing our reading data for AP1 diagnostic that we just took this fall for elementary schools, and it's showing year over year, so the last 3 years
Kelly,
for the fall AP1.
move closer.
Oh, I'm so sorry, for the fall AP1. And as you can see, there's not really a whole lot of change over the last 3 years in reading. This is somewhat good news because we expected more of a drastic and negative effect with COVID, So this was fairly good news for us that it's pretty much staying the same. The next slide shows a comparison of our students who took the assessment in the school setting and those who took it remotely from home. And while there's a small difference in the green colors, those are the students who are already demonstrating some proficiency at grade level, it's not super significant. And when we break it out by grade level, we found that it was mostly represented in the kindergarten level. So that could mean that our kindergartners got a little extra, help at home, or it could be that the kindergartners who are learning remotely this year were just more ready to start kindergarten. So we'll have to dig deeper into that, and we'll know more as the year goes on. But not a big difference there in the setting of the diagnostic. The third slide shows the district data for AP1 compared to the state and compared to national norms. And with this for reading, and as we would expect and as usual, Sarasota outperformed both the state and the national norms for reading. So that was really good news, and that was in all 6 grade levels and in all levels of proficiency. What we want you guys to know is that even though our reading scores are pretty much staying the same and we had some good news there, our curriculum specialists are still really hard at work aligning resources and providing support to our teachers and school leaders in the area of reading, because we know we still have work to do. And the image you see on the left of this slide shows all of the available district resources that our teachers have to help them in their reading instruction and to design rigorous instruction that's aligned to the standards. These resources support the face-to-face learners and our remote learners. In addition, the image on the right shows the the instructional focus guide, a picture of that, and our Blackboard preview courses. This year, our ELA team has spent a significant amount of time enhancing our instructional focus guides, or IFGs, and in developing lessons for teachers, these standards-aligned lessons that have learning intentions, success criteria, resources, activities, and common assessments linked in and embedded in. So teachers are able to copy these lessons right into their own classroom Blackboard course to implement with students and to share with parents via Blackboard. So that was reading. We're going to switch to math, some math data. And a first glance at our Diagnostic 1 math data for elementary shows a little bit of a different story than we saw for reading. So when you look at grades 1 through 5, there's really a declining number of students who are entering grade level already demonstrating some proficiency. In other words, the two green colors, you can see year over year, they're getting smaller and smaller. That's not the direction we want to go in. And if you look at the two red colors, those are the students who are coming into school, into their grade level, 2 or 3 grade levels below. Those percentages are increasing a little bit. So this is really concerning for us, and that's why math is a major focus for us this year.
If I may, one thing that also concerns us somewhat is, when looking at these year to year, year over year, and we're trying to see how much besides the summer slide, how much of a COVID slide we had. And if you notice, this goes from 18, 19, 19, 20, 20, 21, before, COVID. And as you can see, we kind of are slipping each year. The trend is sort of slipping each year in math. And so I know we've talked about that quite a bit, but we're definitely honing in on that as well.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Asplin. And yes, and if you look at that 18-19 and skip to the 2021 year, when you look from 2 years ago to this year, the change is really significant. So that's alarming for us, and that's why it's been our focus since the start of school and with this data and with our principals, assistant principals, and teachers as well. The next two slides just show the similar reports that we had for reading, which are also similar results. Not a big difference in setting for math, taking that diagnostic at home versus school. And then interestingly, the district data for math compared to state and national, we're still doing better, but it's not good enough for us. And it's not, when we compare ourselves to ourselves, we're not happy with that. So
when you measure the remote scores, did they take those tests at home, or did they come into school and take them?
No, they took them at home.
So we don't know for sure how much assistance parent might have given
we don't,
to have them.
Right, but that's why we looked at that report, and when the graph that showed those two bars, that was a K5 amount. When we break it out by grade level, kindergarten is the one that has a little more green, and so probably our 5-year-olds at home might have had a little extra support, as would be expected. We did a lot of prep at the beginning with our teachers to do with parents on, how to help or not help. But again, you just don't know. But schools are looking individually, but really we have to look historically, even over the year. Like that student last year, AP1, how did they perform? How did they perform last year, AP2? And how are they performing now? So you really need to look at more data to determine that.
Thank you.
So the slide after the 3 data slides for math show the resources. What are we doing to respond to this data? And I think I'm there, yeah. So again, on the left, you see our available district resources we have for math, but our math team, along with other members of our curriculum team for elementary, have really focused heavily on revising our instructional focus guide for math. We call it our GPS, or Guide to Plan for Success. And they've enhanced those unit plan. Oh, maybe it went backwards. So we'll show it again as soon as it's up there.
Yeah, we'd like to make sure the people at home are seeing what we're seeing. There you go.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so our team is working really hard to enhance and improve the GPS for math, which is the instructional focus guide for math. They're aligning, these are the unit plans for all grade levels, K through 5, and they're enhancing those unit plans. They're embedding the resources, links straight to them. The goals are in there, the learning intention success criteria, the common assessments are in there, including quick checks, targeted quizzes, and assessments, unit assessments. So they're all in those GPS unit plans. And they're also providing those daily lessons again in math for our teachers in the Blackboard course. So teachers can just copy those daily lessons into their own Blackboard courses to use with students that, again, have all of those aligned components of good instruction there for the teachers to use. In addition, each of our students was given the Ready Florida Maths book, and those have guided instruction, real-world problems, and student practice. So our students are utilizing those in the classrooms as well. And then another big support our team provided was meeting with every grade level team this fall. We call them the CPTs, or during the collaborative planning time. Our team went out and met with all of our grade level teams and showing them these resources, making sure they knew where they were, how to find them, how to use them, and how to respond to this data. So that's been a big component of supporting our teachers in math. Another big area is a new report from iReady called the Prerequisite Report, and I wanted Amy to talk about that a little bit. This was something else we shared during the CPTs.
So the prerequisite report is found in our iReady teacher toolbox, and this report was designed specifically in response to COVID. It provides an opportunity for the teacher to see.
Is your mic on?
The red light, does that show
Yeah,
on? Is that okay? Can you come a little bit closer? There we go. Is that okay? All right, thank you. So the prerequisite report identifies for the teacher areas of unfinished learning that could have resulted from COVID. So this report strategically selects which prerequisite skills are most critical for the teacher to consider before starting instruction on grade level standards. So we can go ahead to the next slide. For example, and you will see in the sample class that comes up, this teacher is able to view can view how her students are predicted to respond to instruction. So at first glance, you'll notice in column A, there's only one student in this group that has demonstrated readiness for the grade level standard. In group B, we see one student who may need some additional support, but the majority of the teacher's students have fallen into group C and group D, indicating that they really will require an in-depth review of prerequisite standards prior to heading into grade level instruction. So what this report will do for the teacher can review what are the critical prerequisite skills. Instead of trying to teach the entire prior year's curriculum, it identifies targeted standards that are a must-do for the students to be successful moving forward. So it really saves some time for the teacher to really target instruction strategically. Okay. Then lastly, one other component that we touched on in our CPTs as we were working with our teachers is highlighting the domain of number and operations in mathematics. Typically what we're seeing when students struggle in the area of mathematics, it's almost always can be traced back to this particular domain. It's really the foundation for mathematics success. So we are developing some parent-friendly resources that our teachers can provide to families that are aligned with the iReady diagnostic results. So they'll be able to send home a parent-friendly letter explaining what is the student goal that's been identified, and a student-friendly or family-friendly game that will help support that goal. So our idea is really to create that bridge and empower our parents so they're aware of the goal, they have the resources to address that goal at home, and they can really become strategic partners with us moving forward.
This slide just really summarizes most of what we said. We know in the slides you received, you didn't have all of our comments, so we wanted you to kind of see in a picture the different things we're doing. One thing on here we didn't really mention was that Mr. Renoff is also asking our curriculum team members to present at his principals meetings and assistant principals meetings so that we can make sure they know about these resources too, know how to coach teachers, support teachers, monitor progress, and so on. And then this is our team. Chris and I are so fortunate to have a really dynamic and talented group of people working on our elementary curriculum and instruction team. That they go extremely above and beyond. They respect one another, work so collaboratively with one another, really take on any task that's thrown their way. They're so compassionate and have so much compassion for our teachers, especially this year. They just really are feeling, the struggles, and that's why they're persisting in providing these supports and resources. They really want to do all they can for our teachers and school leaders. The level of support they are providing this year is unprecedented. It's different than what we've done in the past, but we are really proud of them and love working with them.
Can you just explain, just quickly, our team, our wonderful team, and what they do when they do go to schools, when they go out to schools and meet with teachers and meet with administrators. What actually are they doing out there?
All right, so a lot of times they're meeting with grade level teams, so they might meet with a group of third grade teachers. This year we're doing some things virtually, so we're meeting with third grade teachers possibly at 2 or 3 different schools together, so that kind of builds some nice camaraderie among schools as well, which is a little bit of a silver lining. But they're literally going through these resources in a more detailed way more detailed than what we just did with you, and actually showing them how to use it in planning instruction and implementing instruction. But they're also unpacking the data, their own student data, their actual student data, and helping them decide. I don't know, Amy, if you want to add any more to that.
So in addition to that, outside of unpacking the data, we also go into just putting the work into action. So for example, just recently we worked with a teacher where we were looking at her students targeted for intervention. We were together collaboratively designing what intervention she would put into place for students, how she would progress monitor those students moving forward, talked about what resources would be most effective for her to use with those students. So it's from lesson planning on a daily basis down to that intervention needs for the students as well.
And we also had specialists just go out and model lessons for like a whole grade level of teachers at one of our schools.
Okay, thank you. We have some questions from board members.
Okay.
Ms. Ziegler?
Thank you. Well, thank you for the work. I'm actually very excited to be able to talk about instruction and curriculum. I feel that we have not had a chance, and it is what we're here for. But I know that there's been tireless work behind the scenes, so I appreciate this. And I really like the way this is lined out for a number of reasons, but particularly from the trend standpoint. And especially as we know Summer Slide exists, but we weren't sure the impact of COVID. And as you noted, it wasn't as, fortunately, it wasn't as, particularly on the reading, as concerning. But it is interesting the way it has been put out, and I don't know that we've had it illustrated in this way. And I know this is, again, the beginning of the year, diagnostic. Mid-year diagnostic and then the end of year. And I would be curious to see, again, not to be data overload, but that high level to say, as a comparison, every year we start at this point, but we're able to move those students up. I'd just be curious to see that from a comparison standpoint, because when you do look at this, though, so we've identified COVID did have a detrimental impact on the mathematics, but then let's go to 2018, 19, 19, 20, and still those numbers are not where I want us to be. I don't think anyone, when you look at below grade level. And that's why I think it's important to have a little bit more of a holistic view as at the end of the year, where have we moved that dial, that needle, and then also because that'll show some areas of deficiencies, and I'm assuming you guys do that, but just from my level or from our level, I think that may have been helpful. And because one of my questions is, when you look at taking COVID out, 18, 19, 19, 20, there's still some serious we're not where we want to be. I do find third grade fascinating because it's such a pivotal year, but ironically, when they come in, we don't see that slide impact them as we do in every other year. I mean, every other year. So can you speak to that? Why would that be?
So in third grade, we notice that there's a difference, I would say, in expectation of the rigor of standard for third grade. And I feel that has something to do with the state attaching the automatic retention there.
Correct.
So we do see that the students typically perform much higher on entry point into third grade year after year. And then we'll see that kind of readjustment as students enter fourth grade.
So again, the trend of, and COVID being a bit of an anomaly, the trend is each year there is a slide. They enter in, and this is what this is the fall diagnostic that we're looking at. So it's almost as if second grade is where they must be performing exceptionally at the end of the year to then come back in and be delivering in the fall at that much higher. And then again, it drops down to fourth grade. So
right. It doesn't seem like there's as big a shift from the end of second grade to the start of third grade compared to what you see the shift of expectation from third grade to fourth grade. There's a much greater shift in those fourth grade standards compared to the shift our second grade students see entering third grade.
Okay, I find that fascinating, especially given the significance of third grade performance, and I understand that, but, okay. And then I guess some of my questions were, I think I covered them all, but the only last thing I wanted to say was, I know Mrs. Brown, I think you'd mentioned something about the comparison of online versus in person, and really, I don't see, again, if you look at the trend data, we weren't doing remote learning, and it really does very much match up very similarly to prior years. But again, thank you.
Okay.
for clarification, when you test them, is it pretty much the same test you give them at the beginning of the year than the end of the year? I mean, this is what we expect you to learn at the end of third grade. And we tested them at the beginning to see how much they need to do to get there.
Right. The diagnostic is actually not tied directly to grade level standards.
I see.
Instead, the diagnostic really measures how the student's performing across the entire grade level continuum. So it will look for students on diagnostic 1, if they had a previous year's diagnostic, it actually picks up from where that diagnostic left off the previous year. So their first entry point will be based on their prior year's performance.
Thank you. Ms. Goodwin?
Thank you for this. It's very informative and helpful, I think, in getting an idea of what we're doing. But I'm really concerned about the socioeconomic level of these children. I am concerned about their background. I'm concerned about how many of the students started with us in kindergarten. And do we have any idea of how many are transferring? You know, Florida's pretty transient. Mm-hmm. So I'm concerned about those characteristics that might impact their learning that really didn't happen in Sarasota County schools. Do we have any data on that and how that relates to this group?
I don't think we've looked at it as a district yet. I know Amy does a lot of work working with individual principals on their own school data, and they'll drill down a little bit deeper in that and find out, you know, that's where you really find out the history of the student and where.
Well, I mean, isn't that really important, though? I mean,
it makes a difference.
I mean, I think it really is important.
It makes a difference in how you respond to that data and to that child.
But I think we really need to start looking at this more, and I'm telling you, because some of these children, some of these families are struggling, and they're struggling more now than perhaps they ever had. Our feeding so many students tells us, and families tells us that.
Sure.
There are people begging on the street corners now that we haven't seen before, and it's only going to get worse. But I know that we had a lack of the numbers this year in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Mm-hmm. So would that make our numbers look better in kindergarten because we have fewer students? So I don't know the answers, but some of those impacts of our society, if you will, I think we need to keep a closer look on that. And I also think we need to look at how many students are transferring in from other school districts, from charter schools, from private schools. We need to know those things at every level, I think, as we go forward, because there's going to be some churn back and forth as moms and parents decide, okay, I want to try this, and then I'm going to go back to public school. And we know we have that, but how much is that impacting learning? And that's kind of outside of really what we're doing. Sure. And I just would be interested in knowing some of those kinds of pieces of information. We know at Goshio, where we have our pre-K classes, how that's impacted the students there. And I think it's probably impacting, if we pulled out Goshio, we probably see some good numbers because we have in the past.
Yeah, great point, Ms. Goodwin. And I do, just to piggyback on what Ms. Ellington did have to say, I do think
this is Chris Renoff, our executive director.
This is Chris Renoff.
Renoff, executive director of elementary school.
The best.
Hello, everyone. Yeah. I just wanted to piggyback on what Ms. Ellington did have to say. I think that's a great piece for us to look at as a district, but also I do know you're absolutely right at the individual school level. That's where you really become so personalized with looking at that data, and then how does that transcend into the classroom and from an instructional perspective at the teacher and grade level? So again, thank you very, very much.
Well, I just think that, as things move more and parents have more choices and they decide to try something and then go back and, oh, that didn't work out. I know one parent that's been in about 4 private schools and 2 charter schools and, maybe 6 of ours. I mean, so that does impact a student. Sure. I mean, I think that really impacts a student quite a bit. So I think we have to look at some of those things because, that really impacts the job that we're able to do because it really isn't all about us. I'd like to know how many of these students, just to begin with, have always been with us. I mean, that would give us something.
Well, hopefully our equity coordinator, when he is hired, will help us break down some of those things, especially with what you've talked about, the economic differences. Yeah. Karen?
Yes, I just want to thank you for the skills you bring to the table. Your teamwork and your data is very thorough. I'm interested in if substitutes, short-term subs, turnover in staff and leaves and such are impacting your progress and how it might be affecting where students stand right now.
I think it is. I don't know if Chris wants to speak to that. I mean, the substitute issue, the lack of subs in the covering classes and all, it is definitely affecting. All these things are affecting this year. We're working hard on our team with teachers on these specific things about monitoring the progress and then attending to the differences with the instructional pieces. But we can't deny that those factors are going to play a role.
Yeah, I would have to agree, and I think that's where the power of the PLC and the grade level team really comes in, and what we've built behind the scenes with the Blackboard, because that really does support even the substitute who may come in from day to day and or take on a long-term situation because of a leave of absence. We're asking an incredible amount of our teachers and our administrators, and they are rising to the occasion, but thank you for bringing up that point.
Thank you.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes, thank you so much for the data. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about was seeing that you can specifically target students in each class and what you're doing about it, and if you have to go back and start over. I appreciate that level of detail, so thank you for that. What I'm concerned about is that the bottom level numbers, the below three grades, I loved Mrs. Goodwin also talking about the economic impacts, but and maybe you said this already, have you drilled into the data by school?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so do we know that economically that some of those lower numbers are economically impacted?
We've looked at, for example, our non-title schools versus our title schools, because we have similar reports like we shared with you, but by grade level per school. And our title schools generally show a different, show more areas of concern. Interestingly, this year with math, some of the decreases were still alarming in our non-title schools. So we feel like that's an instructional piece where we really need to help a lot more. But those are students that we want to make sure we're reaching. The struggling students, whether it's because of low SCS or missed school or whatever their background, that's definitely a group of students we want to keep addressing. And as we're working with our teachers with these specific reports, we're hoping to make that difference.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I think that one page that you showed where the prerequisite groups, you drill down with the principals at each school and then even the teams at each school and then each teacher to see where your students are and what you need to do with each student.
Right.
We're looking at it up here and you take it down to the classroom level.
Right.
I appreciate what are we going through this again or can we move on to middle school? I'll let you talk, Mr. Brennan.
I'm sorry, I just want to make one comment on what you said. Yes, exactly, Ms. Brown. Our folks are able to drill all the way down to the individual student, and we do have data related to each school. We didn't provide it today, but we can provide that for you today. Today was more of a high-level district-wide.
If it's all right, could you hold your question? We can move on to the middle and high school now, Ms. Ziegler. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Steve Canties, could you bring your team up, please?
There we go. So we're going to go ahead and move into the middle school portion of the data review. Sue Meckler is our curriculum director. She manages a very strong group of curriculum specialists that we're very proud of the work they do. And go ahead, Sue, why don't you take it away?
All right, so I do want, am I on? Okay. I do want you to understand that this is surface level data today. We have a plethora of data looking at our district dashboards, the amazing resources that we can get there down to the student level, looking at things longitudinally. So our schools do that, our teachers do that, our teams do that, but we wanted to provide to you kind of the surface level data today. As we prepared for our first diagnostic with our middle school students this year, It was really about making sure that first week we were setting goals, that we were looking at their prior performance and having them take ownership of that, and explaining the purpose of the diagnostic was to personalize learning for each student. If you look at reading across the grade levels for our 3 years, you'll see that reading does remain fairly consistent for us as well. Our striving readers, of course, is our main area of concern, but we want to make sure all students are growing. Last year in grade 6, 26% of our students were 2 or more levels below, and this year we do see that increase to 31% as they are in 7th grade. If we look at reading on our diagnostic for remote and in-school students, again, we were concerned, and we see that really we remained very consistent for those students both in school and those students taking it remotely. I'm very proud of our teachers for setting our students up to get the cleanest data possible. Then if we look at our performance across the state and across the nation, we are certainly pleased with our outcomes. However, that is not to say we're satisfied. We have work to do to close the gaps, especially for our striving readers, but also making sure we're stretching that learning for our advanced learners. Then as we look at math, our beginning of the year data, we did see some shifts as we predicted. There were some reports that came out last spring nationally saying the slide in mathematics would be significant. You need to really look at our grade 8 data because it does look significantly different in 1920, and that's because our algebra and geometry students did not participate that year. The teachers in algebra and geometry had asked to do a different assessment in 1920, and we allowed them to do that. We asked them to take it again this year because we knew that there would be tools there to help them close the gaps for those students. And that's exactly what happened, and our algebra teachers are happy to have that personalized learning available for their students. Again, when we look at remote versus in-school, we see very similar responses across both populations, and we are just really proud of that work that our teachers did. The next slide really talks about our math 6, 7, and 8 and that distribution for progression and acceleration. And you will see that our progression in math really does lead to advanced coursework for our students. Our middle school students can earn up to 2 high school credits in math, both in algebra and geometry, which provides even greater opportunities when they get to high school for math and STEM. The next chart, again, is very, very surface level, but I wanted you to see our math acceleration numbers over the past several years. The average percent enrolled is really based on the state's definition who is part of the school grade calculation. So for instance, this year, our 8th graders are based on how they scored as 6th graders. Any student who scored a level 3 or above in 6th grade, who are now sitting in 8th grade, are considered students who should have that opportunity for acceleration in mathematics. Since we didn't have scores last year, they're going back 2 years ago, and those are the students. So our average percent enrolled, you can see, has increased each year from 80% to 84 to 86. This year, 91% of our students who are eligible are enrolled. And then if you look at our pass rates as to how our students actually do on those tests, we had a 96% pass rate in 17-18, and then 94% in 18-19. So we are providing those extra supports for those students to help close gaps and make sure they still have the opportunity for acceleration. So then, just as Kelly said, you know, it's not just about having the data, but it's also what do we do with that data? And so we're very intentional and targeted in our instruction and in our interventions. We really want to accelerate the gaps in that learning loss and keep instruction focused on grade level standards. So our teachers ask themselves, who may need that additional support? What are those skills they needed? What are the resources? And how can that intervention be provided and monitored to make sure that it's working for each student? Some of the strategies we've used at the district level, our ELA and math program specialists have created special report groups within the iReady data that they are monitoring. Those are for those students who we saw a decline in their scores from last year to this year. And those could be our most striving kids to our most accelerated students. And so we're keeping an eye on them, and then we alert the schools if we see anything that's kind of a red flag to say you may want to take a closer look. We also had data chats at each of our schools. The teachers were really happy with some of the new reports that iReady has provided for us. And we're focused on sixth graders in math, working on their math fluency. And then we're also using Standards Mastery every month to make sure our students are, again, focused on grade level standards and how we can scaffold that learning for them. The next slide, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about our Focus 5. This is an area that I'm very proud of. It is a specific intervention to make sure that we are focused on literacy throughout our schools. We use John Hattie's research as well as Doug Fisher's research that's focused on what is that low-hanging fruit. And when we talk about low-hanging fruit, it's what is it that takes the least amount of effort for our teachers but can have the greatest impact for our students. So we have these Focus 5 strategies that we are encouraging our schools and our teachers to use across all content areas to improve literacy instruction for all students. And then in addition to those 5, we also look at, more generic practices such as classroom discussion and scaffolding, which we know are high effect strategies that can truly move the needle for our kids. Our students are also owners of their own learning. We talk about them being assessment capable learners, and they monitor where they are strong. They know where they need to improve. And one of the things that we hear is a growth mindset coming out of our students. Things like, I'm just not good at reading. We don't hear that as much anymore. Instead, we hear, I'm working towards reading harder words and improving my fluency so that I can be successful and understand what it is I read. Next, I wanted to share briefly what it is we're doing to support our distance learners. We were concerned, and we remain concerned about how to engage those students. So I already provided this tool for us called the 6 Things to Do When Teaching Remotely. And really what it did was reinforce that good teaching can happen remotely just as well as it does face-to-face, and keep doing what we know works for kids. The adaptations had to come in relationship building, connecting one-on-one with our students, and making sure we continue to find ways to celebrate and foster ownership of their learning. And the schools are doing an incredible job of this because relationships are so important to the process. School-based administrators have been very supportive of our teachers, and our program specialists have been really supporting the teachers in using these strategies. We also wanted to connect with our families, and so we provided some tools for them because communicating with them on how they could help their students was an essential part of our plan. There were specific tips given to them and also a family center website that they could go to for additional information, which also said to them, set goals with your children, be consistent encourage them, and celebrate with them every small step along the way. Last, I have to share our team. I am so fortunate to work with this amazing team. They continue to go above and beyond, do whatever it takes for each and every teacher. They work nonstop since the shutdown last spring, all summer long. And what's most impressive is they're no longer known as the specialist of their content. They're there to support any teacher for whatever it is they need. They're certainly experts in their content. They have strong technical skills, and they can provide those tips and tricks to help each and every teacher. Some teachers this year have referred to them as emotional support coaches. They're coming down the hall and it's like, oh, my emotional support coach is here. They understand the power of social emotional learning, not only for our students, but for our teachers. Our teachers continue to do the very best they can for each and every student, and our team is there encouraging them, giving them space to breathe, planning alongside of them, teaching students, and most of all, listening to their needs. So I'd like to end with this quote. While we continue to navigate these choppy waters, our rudder is fully in the water, helping us steer our middle school success and stay focused on what matters most, high-quality instruction for all. We remind each other daily that we must stay the course and keep the seas as smooth as possible for our teachers and students. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Could we move on to high school, or is there something burning you have to ask in middle school? All right, because we're already past the time, but we definitely want to hear high school and have time for our questions.
I want to thank Sue. Thank you for the work that you put in that, and she does have an amazing team. This is Catherine Kokoza. She is our curriculum director for high school, and she's going to, the presentation will look a little different because the data is much different at high school than it is at middle school. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Canties. Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to share the high school progress monitoring information with you today. While we do not have...
Could you bring the mic a little closer?
Yep. While we do not have iReady data to share with you, we do have some data from USA Test Prep, which is the resource we use to create our benchmark assessments, and from Achieve 3000, which is what we use in our intensive language arts classrooms. A few points to keep in mind as we go through this data is that we use USA Test Prep for geometry, Algebra 1, and biology, and English 1 and English 2. The other pieces to keep in mind is that our benchmarks for geometry and Algebra 1 and biology were designed to align with our instructional focus guides, which means that the students are only assessed on the standards that they have learned to date. In English language arts and US history, it's cumulative. So the students are assessed on standards that they will need to know on the end of course exam or the FSA. So that is, we will look again at that throughout the year. So the next slide, please. While geometry only has results for this year, you see the slide has 2 data points. I am offering an apple to orange comparison of the average scores from the benchmark results to the average raw score from the geometry end of course exam, which was taken in the spring of 2019. The green bar is the average score on the geometry benchmark, and the orange bar is the average geometry EOC raw score converted to a %. A raw score is a student's actual achievement level before being adjusted. Remember, the benchmark was not covering all the standards that are assessed on the end of course exam. The school will continue to monitor the progress by administering the school-based midterm that will cover the standards that are taught through the end of semester 1, and the second benchmark, which assesses the standards taught through quarter 3. The same atypical comparison is offered for Algebra 1, with the green bar representing the average score on the Algebra 1 benchmark, and the orange bar representing the average raw score from the Algebra 1 EOC, converted to a %. The average raw score converted to a %. The progress monitoring will continue in the same manner as previously mentioned. For biology, we do not have raw scores to offer you. What we do have is the previous 2 years from our prior resource that we used for our benchmark data. So as you look at this chart, you'll notice the green bar is representing the USA test prep data, or USA test prep assessments, and the orange and red bars are providing for you the prior 2 years of benchmark assessments using our old resource. Now, if we move forward to US history, for US history, we do have 2 years of data. We've been using the USA test prep for 2 years with US history. So in this case, you are looking at the green bar, which is this year's results for AP1 or administration period 1, and the orange bar, which is last year's results. And again, US history is looking at all of the standards that are assessed on the EOC. So as we move forward, you'll see English 1 for grade 9. Again, we have 2 years of data here as well. So the green bar is representing our current data, the orange bar, last year's data. What you may notice is that Sarasota High is missing a green bar. The reason for that is Sarasota High has graciously volunteered to pilot a new state resource for us. That state resource is called the Adaptive Progress Monitoring Tool. The Adaptive Progress Monitoring Tool is sponsored by the Department of Education, and according to the Department of Education, it is directly aligned to the FSA, and it will give us a breakdown of how our students are performing on that day that they took the progress monitoring. It's similar to what a PSAT and an SAT is. So on the day our students take PSAT, they kind of have an idea of how they would look on the SAT if they were to take the SAT on that day. The Adaptive Progress Monitoring Tool will do the same for us. So we are very excited to see what Sarasota High's data looks like, because what we're hoping to do is offer that mid-year to all of our students and all of our schools for 9th and 10th grade. So the next slide shows you English 2, grade 10. Again, the green bar is looking at our data for this year. The orange bar is a comparison to last year. And English 1 and 2 are similar to US history in that we are always assessing all of our standards. All right, so if we move forward, this is our reading progress monitoring slide. This is Achieve 3000, and Achieve 3000, again, is in use in all of our intensive language classrooms. We are excited to show that this year, all of our grade levels, 9, 10, 11, and 12, are all showing results from their first level sets that are outperforming what their expected growth is. So we're moving in a positive direction, and when we compare it to last year, our growth is showing a little more significant than it was last year, which is somewhat surprising to us given the COVID situation. But it is also speaking to the hard work of our teachers in our schools. We can keep moving. So as far as our next steps and what we're doing, at each one of our school sites, our curriculum specialists have been actively engaged in curriculum conversations or data chats with their departments or respective departments. And not only are they meeting with teachers, but they're also meeting with administrators to talk about what the data looks like and what the impacts could be and how they can support specifically at the individual schools. In addition to that, we are working with new teachers as they come in. As I'm sure you're well aware, we've seen quite a turnover rate in our high schools, and in a lot of cases, these new teachers or new hires are working in our tested areas. So our specialists have direct assignments with teachers to help bring them kind of up to speed quickly. As they meet with the teams, the PLC teams at the schools, one of the outcomes that we typically see is boot camps. And the boot camps are specially designed intensive instruction planned by the schools, where they will identify teams of teachers and program specialists to come in and provide small group instruction to students preparing for FSA retakes, EOC retakes, and in the spring we'll look at FSA and EOC. In addition to that, we have started to identify some tools that we think will have an overall impact on improved instruction, like the DBQ project for social studies. Specifically, we're targeting world history because of the connection to English 2. And we are looking at doing argument-driven inquiry as a science program, that we are adding in at the end of this spring for the future use next year with our science programs. Finally, we have added district-wide PLCs to the mix. And in those district-wide PLCs, what we have done is identified hot topic items for teachers, and we're connecting the teachers across schools, bringing them together once per month to talk about these different hot topics and share ideas with one another. So our high school acceleration data is up from last year to 73.91. Remember, acceleration for us is determined by ACE, enrollment in and passing, in most cases, a test, ACE, AP, IB, and dual enrollment. So we are looking at an improved score for our school grade this current year. This is the amazing team that I have the opportunity to work with every day. This team is out in our schools right now. Actually, they're literally out in our schools right now, working in classrooms with teachers, not only talking about data, but helping with the day in, day out strategies that are necessary. They will do anything that they are asked to do, and they love nothing more than to support teachers and see students learning. And so the quote I leave you with is, data by itself is useless. Data is only useful if you apply it. And that is what we're truly seeking to do.
Questions?
Again, thank you very much. Ms. Ziegler?
Too many papers up here. Thank you for this. And again, I couldn't agree with the quote that you just read. It is so true. One question I have is on geometry. If I understood the way you outlined how this is analyzed, all the rest of the trends either look flat or there's somewhat of a decline, which is, again, we potentially predicted, except geometry. Geometry is the inverse. Can you help me understand what's transpired there?
Can we pull that one back up?
Again, if I'm understanding, we're looking at the orange bar is the EOC from 2019. Correct. And that the green bar is the entry, I don't know what you said, API, what assessment?
Yep, so the
AP1, sorry.
Yep, the orange bar, I just want to make sure I'm saying it correctly since I'm not seeing it in front of me.
It's up there.
All right, perfect. So the green bar is what our benchmark is right now. The orange bar is last year's EOC, or not last year, 2 years ago's EOC results. So we are seeing what appears to be an increase in how our students are performing. But if you remember, for math, for both of our math courses, they only assess the standards that have been taught to date. So what we are not seeing quite a true end of year look. We are looking at, I can tell you, specifically for geometry, we are looking at measurements and properties. We're looking at congruence and similarities. So it's a very small look, but what that's telling us is that in many cases, mastery was met and that we're in a positive direction, but it is not giving you the full picture of what students are assessed on.
And you know, we have, with the advent, and Karen, you'll remember as we were putting more students into the algebra curriculum, and particularly 8th grade, although we had some 7th graders, we had to readjust the curriculum and the pathway at the high schools to make sure that we were supporting those students who were getting into geometry. So if you think about a student in 8th grade in geometry, that's your high-performing kids. When they get to high school, they're moving on to Algebra 2, they're moving on to some other high levels of math. But for those students who are coming into high school with either Algebra 1, which would still be a level 3 or above student, or they were just in a general 8th grade math track, which typically would be a level 1 or level 2 student, we've had to provide additional support. So what you might be seeing is we've purposely and intentionally put curriculum supports in for those students who may be struggling. And when you see them in geometry in high school, they may have, in many cases, especially those who would be level 1, level 2, an additional math class before they take geometry. Typically, we would have taken Algebra 1 and Algebra 1 and geometry. Some people do Algebra 1, Algebra 2 geometry, but typically it's Algebra 1 geometry. Now you would likely see for students who are need extra support, you'll see Algebra 1, Liberal Arts, Math before geometry, and then they'll take geometry, which you'll see an improved, what we're seeing is we feel like that's the right intervention to improve those scores in geometry.
Okay.
But it is a small picture. I think that's really important. It is a small picture, a small number of standards, but we're definitely, anytime the numbers are going up, you feel good about that.
And the reason I asked that, thank you, and I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. And it's a high level, and even if we started with elementary and then middle, and we look at the growth, and this is the trend from 2018 to today. And again, hats off to all of the teachers, all of the staff. Right now is just so far from anything of normalcy, but they're still making it happen. And so I'm going to shift to just a macro conversation of where my thought was looking at that is having it presented in this way of what's happening to those lower quartile more than that, students, and not just, we understand COVID, we understand the disruption, and we're working through that, but how is that transferring into their timeline with Sarasota County Schools? And so making sense of that, are they actually improving? Because I know this is aggregated data. I do also know, I know this was mentioned before, I know we drill down, and I know that's at the school level. Denise is nodding her head, because I know we've talked about that, and what's fascinating is, and I was going to make this comment before, but oftentimes it's perceived that it's a Title I school potentially, more on the elementary and middle, but it's not always. And so when we're able to drill down to that individual level, we're able to hopefully be providing those supports, so it's not just a preconceived notion that it's going to be these schools that have these kids, et cetera, because then we're going to miss out on helping them. But I was just trying to make sense of the data. Thank you very, very much.
So
go ahead.
Just to give you an example, as we do drill down, because again, we showed you high level data, but if I'm looking at one school in the actual category and how it compares, for example, the benchmark assessment came out at 35%, the EOC was at 31.48%. So while we gave you very high apples to orange comparison, we do feel strongly as we drill down that what we're looking at with teachers and students is pretty good. We're on a pretty good trajectory to be in a similar place as where we were in the past, if not slightly improved.
All right, thank you. And thank you all for coming today and explaining. Perhaps in a future board meeting or workshop, we might be able to have another, especially for our new members, talk about the district dashboard and then show how we take this information and at a school level, maybe have a principal and a teacher say, this is what I do with it, and I go down to this teacher, and then this teacher will look at it, and then this is how I deal with it, not any names, but on a general way. And maybe, we can see how this information translates down into the classroom. I think that would answer some of the things that Ms. Ziegler brought up today, and I think it might be helpful to not only all of us board members, but also to the public that's tuning in.
Yeah. So could I just say, for a closing, Ms. Brown, please?
All right.
I just want to say that, we're at the end of the first quarter, which ended, this quarter, first quarter ended 3 weeks later than it has in any other year. It has been a little bit different, but I think people feel like we're a little farther into the school year than we actually are. So we're at the end of the first quarter, but we do know the testing window isn't changing. I just, there's a few things that we figured out in this process from last spring to now. And first of all, people are working incredibly hard. The teachers have been. So one of the things we figured out is our teachers are super resilient. And we can't say that enough. And sometimes it comes across as just pandering or whatever. But it is so true. When you walk through those classrooms, you're seeing things that I would have never thought possible. And so, to the credit of our teachers, their resiliency has been amazing. The other things that we figured out is, we have, I think, become very good at, Ms. Ziegler, you mentioned what kind of supports and resources are we providing those students that are struggling. They're very similar to what they have been in the past, except more intensely for those students who are at-risk remote learners. We have a whole project going on around our at-risk remote kids. We know kids, the other thing we figured out is that when students aren't with us, they're not in as good a place as if they are with us. So we have to continue to work really hard at identifying those students. I have principals going out and knocking on doors. Everything is going on right now to make sure that those kids are being supported. So I think that's number two, that that we figured out. I think, the other thing we can feel good about, our curriculum teams have changed the way they did business. We talked about this very early on in the process, whereas we would be doing a lot of training, maybe some new initiatives, maybe doing a lot of large group professional development. We are now working, these teams, all three of them are working individually with teachers where those needs have been identified either by the teacher themselves asking for help, and they're more willing to do that now than they ever have been, or maybe an administrator seeing somebody that might be struggling and asking for that support. So I want to give a big shout out and commend Dr. Kingsley working with this team because we have changed the way we've done business, and I think we are about as effective as we can be. The data at the end of the year is going to tell us a story that hopefully we can be very proud of. I think comparing to other districts, what we do, I have to feel like we are doing everything we can and no stone unturned. So I'm very proud of the people we work with, and I think you all could be very, very proud of them too. So thank you for all of your all support. We appreciate you all being here, and thank you.
Ms. Goodwin?
Well, I want to thank you too, because I know you all are doing a heavy lift. I know the teachers are doing a heavy lift, the administrators are, and your curriculum folks are, and we do know that, and we do thank you for the work that you're doing. It's really very hard. Mm-hmm. And we have to be mindful of the mental health of our staff, our teachers, and our students. And I am particularly concerned about the mental health of those remote students, because I think sometimes, they don't maybe articulate it. I know a few that are, and I'm really happy about the fact that they are reaching out and getting some help, but I think we all have to be cognizant of that. But I would like to see you come back and spend more time with us at another workshop, because I think there's a lot of other information that we need. I think some of the data about where do these kids come from? Mm-hmm. Are they coming from our school district? Particularly in high school, there's, again, that same issue with, did they go through charter school through the 8th grade and then switch to high school? I want to know how well they're doing. Now, I think some of them probably are doing very well if they came from our charter schools, but maybe, again, transient, maybe they've moved. But I think some of those areas we really need to look at and focus, because I think that tells a story that makes your job much more difficult. So, we want to support you in all ways that we can, but we need to see that true picture of what's out there. And as our community has been changing and evolving, and is doing at this critical time, I think we all have to be looking at all those other identifiers, if you will, that they're not from a test, they're not from anything else. And then look what's happening with our tests. Look what's happening with the SAT and the ACT. Florida schools are still requiring those. Other schools are not. Other states are not. So we have to really look at some of those things that are happening or will happen. And then I think we have to pivot, because we've got this whole new standard coming down the pike. And I've been told that that's not going to be delayed. I wish it were. But, I don't see that going forward so much. I think Common Core and what we're doing now is so far advanced to what we're going to be backing up to do with more memorization and some, I'm not sure about BEST.
Yeah.
So I think we would like to hear more about, some of your plans for that transition as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Goodwin brought up another point that we're hearing from the community, and that is the mental health of our students and our staff. And perhaps that's something else that we can touch on and come back around to at another workshop. What are we doing, and what resources are out there for our students, for our remote students, and particularly for our staff who really have a lot on their shoulders right now? What resources are out there? And we don't want to know who's using them. We just want to know and make sure that everyone knows that they're out there. We have one more name, Mr. Edwards. You have some questions?
I'm going to go quickly. I know we're in a time constraint. I want to say that I appreciate the remote comparisons where possible, I think, and congratulations, because the concurrent learning is difficult, and I was pleased to see that data. Secondly, I want to point out that when I ask a question, and I've done this in the district as I've been traveling, I've never asked a question where someone said, no, we haven't considered that. So when I ask a question, it's really because I want to point out to the public that how far you take this data and how deeply you go. And I know we were at the 40,000 feet level, so I just want to say that amazing work. I agree with what I've heard from other board members. I would love to just get a follow-up at another workshop quickly that would say, here's the data, here's the things that we saw, that we're sharing best practices, here's what's not working, here's what our plan is to fix it. And because when we get to the data at the end of the year, it's too late. I think we want to show to our public and our parents that we're on top of this and what we're doing each and every day with all of your hard work. So thank you.
Thank you again, all of us, and thank you to the staff back at the schools who are working on this also. Next item on the agenda, Dr. Asplin.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much, curriculum team. Great job. Awesome job. Thank you very much. Next, we have Dr. DePillo, who will bring us up to speed to give us an update on Suncoast Technical College programs. I know as he gets settled there, I have traveled around to see him a few times. I've been in the auto mechanics area, the plumbing area, HVAC. It's just amazing the things that they're doing out there, and I thought it'd be a good idea if Ron could come in and just give us a quick update, quick overview of Suncoast Technical College. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Good morning. Welcome, new school board members, Dr. Rose and Mr. Edwards, veteran school board members, and Dr. Asplin. Thank you for having me today. I do want to spend a few moments, not very long, just highlighting some of the wonderful work that's being done at your technical college and your CT programs within the district. So without further ado, Suncoast Technical College. We offer over 30 programs, and right now, currently in October, we have about 2,500 or 2,800 students attending the college. Those programs are designed specifically with employers in mind, with the direct, tailored instruction to achieving employment. Our customers are not only the students, but the employers. We look at 3 factors when we design programs and evaluate programs: completion, licensure, and placement. And when we try to strive for our accreditation through Council of Occupation Education, says we need to be around 70% for each of those categories, and we strive for 90 to 95%. So that's our goal in terms of what programs we offer at the college and how we evaluate our programs. We cover all the career clusters that are offered in the state of Florida in career technical education. Really, it's a program about learning English at some point in our ESOL classes to a skilled trade potentially with either welding or any of the other trades that are out there. Or it could be as crafty and with ingenuity of creating a buffet for one of our events that we had in our bistro class. So there's a lot of opportunities for students to express not only their creativity, but their interest in terms of a career.
While you're talking about the culinary class, I understand you've got the bistro is out there, but you've got a special lunch program for Thanksgiving meals.
We are doing, yes, an annual Thanksgiving feast that occurs both on North Campus and the South Campus. Friday from 10:30 to 12:30, we'll be offering takeout meals. It's a Thanksgiving feast of turkey, all the fixins, dessert, and a drink. I think it's a $10 bill at the North Campus, and starting tomorrow through Thursday at Northport Campus.
And they can call ahead and order a takeout too, correct?
They can call ahead, or they can just show up and place their order, and they'll make it as soon as they can. And there's an assembly line type of situation there where they can walk in, pay their money, social distanced, safe cleansing environment with sanitation stations, and they'll be handed a almost contactless as possible.
Great.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me about that. It's an annual event that actually creates an opportunity for students in the culinary program to provide that service and learn customer service skills as well as the technical skills in creating a menu and costing it out. And then the money goes for our skills events for CTSOs in Skills USA. We're also a community hub. So as you look through some of the different programs that we have between the bistro itself, the Cutting Edge Salon, we have a preschool, pre-K program. Our conference center hosts many community events. We are partners with the city of Northport and actually the county with the Shannon Staub Public Library attached to the Northport campus. We hold and host many events. The bistro is open 3 days a week, 4 days a week, depending on which campus. We've held summits and seminars at our location. And what that does is not only gives our students a chance to interact with the public and do presentation skills, it gives us an opportunity to showcase the school to the public and what's being done on campus. You know, the puzzle of figuring out a career for students is a challenge. And depending on the interest level and where their skill sets lie, we offer a myriad of programs that can be very appetizing for these students in terms of their career. So we are all not only an alternative to a college education as a degree sequence, but the certificate will allow them to get what we call a living wage career so that they can have a family and enjoy and be participants in our economy here locally. So Suncoast, we call it, we're helping solve that puzzle of the career choice because we have so many opportunities for them.
How does the cost for the technical college compare to, say, other training programs that are out there, even community college or universities?
So
Takes up these same courses.
If I tell you what I would have a quiz for you about what our tuition costs per hour, and I can almost assure you that nobody here would know the answer. We're at $2.44 per hour. So our career in a year averages around $4,000 for a certificate program from start to completion, including books and materials and uniforms. Our highest cost is, of course, like fire and law enforcement, which approaches $8,000, but average is about $4,200.
And you've got some programs out there that the employers even help pay for.
Yes,
correct?
we have. We're in one of the news articles about our partnership with the Sarasota Memorial Hospital. We're completing students that they pay the tuition and pay for their materials and actually have them on staff hired as they're going through training for their beginning just above a CNA when they come in. So yes, we have partnerships with them. We have express programs with the auto services, with plumbing, with HVAC. We work very closely with Career Source and Career Edge in terms of funding these programs and innovative ways of presenting pathways for adults who are trying to either upscale their employment or be retrained totally. And so we have a community of partners, which I'll speak about in a moment, that really come together and respond to the needs of our local workforce. And they use us as the vehicle to get the employees up to speed so they can be hired and be productive in the community, excuse me. But thank you for that comment. Next is, so it all starts for us in K-12. So our CTE programming starts with awareness in elementary school, exploration in middle school, and then exposure is what we call the actual experience in high school and then in post-secondary. But it all starts in K-12. And we're positioned in Sarasota County with a magnet high school called Suncoast Polytechnical High School, which is right next to Suncoast Technical College. And that whole school is designed to give early access to students to career technical programs on a more intense scale than they would at their comprehensive high school. We have signature programs that are cutting edge in animation and gaming, robotics and engineering, and then we have an LPN program for 9th grade students that when they finish in 12th grade, they are certified licensed nurse practitioners that can go on. It's one of the only ones in the state of Florida that has that accomplishment at the end and that result, and we're very proud to be putting students through that program. for us, the pride is that they go on to medical schools and have a great entry and a resume going in, because there's not very many students coming to those colleges with LPN certifications, and so they can see the commitment of those students. So as opposed to having them enter the workforce, they are really getting ready for their college career down the road. Just to give you an idea, our high school enrollment, we have currently in high school around 5,100 students registered for career technical programs out of the 10,000 students or so that are in high schools. These are the highlights of the enrollments of the top 5 high school enrollments. You'll see sometimes the enrollments are based on the programs that are being offered at the high schools, so they're limited in terms of the number of students. Engineering is one of our most prolific programs, culinary, and then early childhood currently. Business programs are also very large. They're mixed in, but digital design stands out, of course, with the Adobe certifications. Those are very popular, and we have great success with those programs in terms of getting industry certifications. Middle school has another selection of programs. In middle school, we currently have approximately 3,300 students enrolled in CTE courses. There's, you'll see there the top 5, again, engineering being one of the programs that is at every middle school. And then depending on the variety of instructional staff that we had at the schools, the programs are designed around the interest level at that school. Coding Fundamentals is a very strong program there also, computer apps, and of course then we offer the digital tools certificates that go along with those. Again, when we talk about post-secondary credentials at high school, we're talking about industry certifications through the CAPE legislation. And you'll see last year with COVID, we had around 1,200 or so, almost 1,300 total industry certifications. That's off from 2,100 the year before. But we are on track to recoup those and then meet the current goal of around 2,000 again. So hopefully we'll be able to recuperate the 300 or 400 that we missed last year and continue to grow in the CAPE industry certifications. The surprising thing for us is that, you know, as the state evolves, they also change what they value in terms of industry certifications. And we're going to see a change coming up this year in regard to the removing of Microsoft Office and bundling it with multiple certificates so that it'll make it a little bit more difficult to achieve, but still on the radar for us. But you'll see Microsoft Office is one of the strongest ones that we have, and all 3 of those, that's a bundle of understanding Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. I think those are 3 of the most used software packages that you'll find if you go to college or if you ever enter into workplace. Those are 3 great skills to have. Speaking of acceleration, I know Ms. Kokoza talked about acceleration. Not only can you get that acceleration through dual enrollment or the programs, particularly like ACE and IB and AP, you can also get it through the industry certifications that are on the CAPE list. Currently, there's 766 of those students in the senior cohort that have earned acceleration through industry certification. Now, many of those students have earned it also in another way through IB or AAP, but with 766 students had earned an industry certification and have gotten acceleration through industry certs. When we talk about engagement, we talk about trying to get student skills outside of the curriculum itself, and so multiple schools have had these multiple disciplinary projects, and I'll give you an example of what that means here with Sarasota High School t-shirt design. So this is a project that came together from the CT teachers at Sarasota High, and what they're trying to do is, what if a business of making t-shirts, what if we had that? What would that look like? So first you have to figure out what the need is. So there's a business classes come up with a business model, and they look into the idea of creating t-shirts. Is there a need? And so they found that there were people across the school districts, or schools and the school districts, buying t-shirts from companies and having them designed. And so their idea was, why can't we do that as a student group? So the design students applied their Adobe skills, soft skills, working with customers, understanding what they're looking for. They also have to develop the design work themselves, have it proofed and have it checked and then signed off on before it goes into production. Then the production team is made up of engineering students. They actually look at quality control, their maintenance of the equipment, maybe even the production timelines and efficiencies. If there's any issues with the production, they have to troubleshoot. All skills that are well related to the engineering curriculum, but also in the process of production and manufacturing. Then the business students actually have to do the bookkeeping, scheduling, inventory, and then they actually do the analysis of whether or not the business is profitable or whether or not they should continue down. And what do we do with the money if they are earning money? So they're the ones that become the accountants, the projectors of interest, and it's been very successful. We have similar projects at all the high schools, not to the extent maybe of Sarasota High, but each of them have an entrepreneurial type project that they're working on with our students that are in career technical.
I think maybe when we're looking at the referendum or even looking at brochures for the district, maybe we need to be looking into our schools rather than hiring outside.
Yes, our design teams have taken on several projects from the district, and you'll see, and I'll speak a little bit about another project that's similar to that, about using our students and creating projects for them to learn from, but enhancing that by saving the district some money by not going outside, and also giving them a portfolio project to take with them as a student to say, I created that. It's on the side of one of the buses that are driving around the SCAT bus, or it's a billboard somewhere. They really do. Makes a difference for them when they're looking for employment. Portfolio projects are the ones that get the most attention. Yes. So student engagement. So we're engaging students in a lot of different activities. So those kind of projects that Ms. Brown spoke of. We also have STEM Smart competitions. We had the Six in a Mix. These are all events that are industry specific that engage kids and network with professionals locally. What we want to do is give them the opportunity to learn more about what it looks like outside of the classroom and in the work environment, to network with people locally, to make that connection so that they can then go ahead and visit that place, shadow, do an internship or an apprenticeship. Those happen all throughout the year. For example, the construction rodeo is hosted between STC and MTC. We flip year to year. The construction rodeo brings together about 100 vendors in the construction industry, including all the trades, to a central location where we bring about 400 students total from Manatee and Sarasota County, and they get to explore options. They get to talk to the business owners. What are you looking to hire? Can I get hired? What do I need to be hired? And so they have that interaction. And one of the most important parts on is the bottom piece where it shows all the business partners that are involved, the outreach to the community. It's really driven by the employers to help us train people up and get them ready for employment. Similarly, we do a car show annually. Last March, of course, it was canceled, but the car show, again, our auto dealerships are almost COVID-proof. You still need to have cars repaired. They still break. People are going to work. There's a large demand for service techs in our area. According to the industry, there's 20 to 30 vacancies every year that go unfilled. And as we continue to produce graduates, they continue to hire them. Experience Engineering Luncheon is a secondary program that we have for juniors and seniors. Those students interested in going to an engineering school get an opportunity to sit with local engineers who have been hired recently or are hiring engineers from the HR department, and they do roundtables. It's almost like we call it speed dating, where they get to sit with 3 different groups of engineers, and they get to ask them any questions. How much money do you make? What do you do in the morning? What do you do in the afternoon? How much work do you take home? All those questions before they even get to the college level. Again, they get to network, they get to collect names, contact information. They ask them about, trying to get through the first year of school as an engineer. What does that look like? Can I call you if I have some trouble? Very intimate relationships happen very quickly within that 2 hours. Also, we talk about projects. We had a student design and manufacture 32 literature racks for the grade level campaign for grade level reading last year. Maybe it was the year before. No, it was last year. They're all blurring together. Yeah, so we had a student design and kind of replicate a rack so that all these schools could have a place to put this literature. And what that did for Chris, who's in the picture there, he actually took it on as a project and designed every one of them and then manufactured them all almost from start to finish with very little help from his teacher. Some of his students helped him with the manufacturing, but it was Chris's design. And matter of fact, Chris is a wonderful student. We're hoping to get him back as an instructor as soon as we can. Another farm to school projects. Sarah Dan's been here talking about the farm to school. Well, I don't know if she mentioned that our carpentry made all the raised beds. They went out and laid the block for all the raised beds. The plumbing company or classes went out and did all the irrigation for her, and then the electricians hooked up all the timing mechanisms. So those are all real life projects for our students, and they went out there and were able to do that to support another program at the school and be a part of the good outcomes that farm to school is having. We have an ACE program, just in case you didn't know. It's the Adult Community Enrichment Program. We call it summer camp for seniors, that if you have interest in any type of activities, whether it be watercolors to art appreciation, we have classes, and we also have a bus that'll bring the classes to you. So we've been out on the road a couple times. They were taking classes out. I don't think we're running the buses currently, but when that bus goes out, it's all about bringing the classroom to those who need it. And with that, when you talk about roads, all roads lead to STC for your career needs. So that's a nutshell. I know it was kind of quick. I know you're on a timeline. I could spend 2 or 3 hours talking about career technical education and what Suncoast Technical College is doing, but I would welcome you to come to our 3-hour tour anytime.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes, we've got several questions. Last night I was watching the NBC Nightly News, and they had a young boy, I believe he was 6 or 7 years old, from Memphis, Tennessee, that did a rap song, ABC Careers. And of course, I forgot what the A one, but they said, Lester Holt said, well, it could have been Anchorman. And you should look, if you just Google ABC career rap song, there's several links to it that you can come up, and perhaps you can use that on Career Day going into some of our elementary schools. First up, we have Jane Goodwin.
Well, I want to thank you, Dr. DiPillo, for being here with us today, because this is, one of my favorite topics is career and technical education. I happen to have started my career and technical education training in high school, and ended up, being able to get a job and really worked my way through college in 4 years, and then was a teacher in high school that today would be considered career and technical. Knowing all the great things that we're doing in our 2 schools, what is it that you need this year? What are you looking for legislatively or anything else? What would make your job as the executive director of this important piece of our school curriculum? What do you need?
So we would love to have more and more pretty toys that we use in our labs. The key to our delivery is that we create a learning environment that simulates the work environment. And in some cases, particularly in the medical field, in the firefighting and EMT fields, some of that equipment is very, very expensive. And so even though we have great partnerships with our local employers who have equipment that's available, by the time they're able to donate equipment to us, it's pretty much expired and it's either outdated. So our constant battle is trying to maintain the level of equipment that matches the labor fields. Yes, in business, we get new calculators and new software programs, and for our business classes, but those are affordable. It's the main equipment, the simulators for medical use, the ambulances that need to be, retrofitted, some of the equipment in the auto area is very expensive. We do have grants that we've been writing, so currently it's money from the rapid credentialing, from the Perkins grants, from the CARES Act, the GEARS money that we're receiving is covering some of those expenses. But the support of the board when it comes time to replace equipment, and if we have emergency needs that we can continue that, we are always looking to streamline our programs and to offer the most efficient programs. So basically what I need is the support of the board when we come forward with issues or concerns or needs that they look at them as essential.
Because these courses are more expensive to put together than a regular course would be in a high school.
Yes, that's correct. And the state model for funding does not reward growth in programs because of the way it's funded over a 3-year continuing average from the prior 4 years. So we have trouble when we're trying to expand our programs and maintain the workforce demand from our side, is that the money doesn't get caught up for 4 years. So sometimes we have to wait.
So maybe a new formula. Mrs. Rose?
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Thank you for what you're doing, Dr. DePillo, and the resources that you're providing our students, particularly with the growing opportunities and the partnerships. And when I look at the students having, if I translated you correctly, more access at Suncoast Polytech, I look at the criteria that it takes to get into the Polytechnical High School, and if there's consideration of benefits of increasing access in any way that we might want to support that as a board to other schools, looking at in today's world, I don't see it as a pathway to a career or a pathway to college. I see careers as a great opportunity to pay your way through college and omit the debt. So that's one piece, access and how much we can give those options to all students that may not necessarily meet Polytech criteria, as well as any initiatives for our families. And I know that Dr. Kingsley at a few of our schools has programs for families, but are we growing or increasing opportunities for Sarasota County parents and families that have socioeconomic challenges and the like to access our resources at Suncoast College?
So first, let me respond to the other high schools. We have currently around 600 dual-enrolled high school students from the other comprehensive high schools at both, including charter schools.
Nice.
So we have a maintaining, that number has increased over the last 3 years. But however, there's limited capacity, of course. We're an adult institution, so we have to be very careful about the ratio of number of high school students versus number of paying adults. And high school students do go for free. The second piece is, yes, we reach out. We initiated a program for overcoming some of the challenges for the socioeconomic parents that, or even adults that are trying to get into our programs. And one way of doing that was offering free SCAT bus passes to all students. So as you enroll into our programs, if you carry an STC badge, you get to ride the SCAT bus for free. And so that allowed transportation for not only to school, but to work and to groceries and to doctor's offices. It may not be the perfect solution for a lot of people, but it is a crutch up a little bit for transportation issues. Second one is trying to put programs where the people are, and that's a struggle at times. We're working with several different people on trying to put training programs in locations which are nearer to those populations of need. Outside of that, we have the Pell through FAFSA. The Pell grant pays most of the tuition for our students that are in need.
Thank you.
You talk about, I know we've got a program in Newtown, and we've got the facility in Northport. Do we still have that one in Alta Vista, and then there was something by Venice Elementary and High School there?
So we still have the one at Alta Vista, and that's we have an LPN program there, or CNA program there for the Title I parents with the 2-Gen program that we work with. We have the Fire Academy that's on Fruitville and Beneva. We have at Venice right now, the program we have is we have a place at the Goodwill, working at the Goodwill place. We don't have any trade programs in Venice right now. Venice High School is using that as an expansion place for their expanding population of students right now. Until that gets relieved, they'll be using that facility that saved on bringing in extra portables. The South Campus is strictly at our new Northport campus.
Thank you. Ms. Ziegler?
Thank you. Well, I'll be brief because I know we're tight on time, but this is such an important topic. I couldn't agree more on making sure we maintain this being a priority to access for our students, because one of the number one things we all know, but for businesses, trying to find skilled workforce is a huge problem, even when unemployment, well, fortunately it's going the correct way, but still ensuring we're providing that to our students. And one thing you said, and I believed was on a prior legislative agenda for us, was the funding for CTE. Is that correct, Mrs. Goodwin? We had 2 years ago a request to amend the funding source because economically speaking, and I think this is a very justified discussion of, we can't take our eye off of K-12 general curriculum by any means, but we can also concurrently continue to provide life skills, applicable teaching to not only our students but also to the public. But what you said, made me remember that it makes it much more hard for you to continue to offer those if the funding is not adjusted. So I know we'll be talking about our legislative platform, but I would like to note that because I think that's so important, and I can't imagine other legislators not realizing the economic long-term benefit to that too, and may not be aware of that lag financing issue. So thank you for all the work you're doing. I could go on. I will stop. But
we are on the agenda. That is one of the agenda points for the Sarasota Chamber. And also, I believe that we were, I don't know what this year's legislative platform is going to be, but for the commission, county commission.
Okay. And then maybe if the board approves, we can add ourselves on that and see if we can.
And I know we have a legislator interested in challenging and proposing some new legislation locally. So he's more than willing to step up.
Very good.
Enter that language.
Great.
Thank you.
Ms. Goodwin?
Yes, Mrs. Ziegler, I appreciate you mentioning that because I think it's a really important issue for us all, particularly in the environment we're in economically. But that was what I was looking for Dr. DiPillo to say, is because, we really haven't increased the funding. We really need to address that at some point in time. Somebody needs to address the funding and the funding formula for career and technical. And yes, I would love to see us include that on our platform, which we'll be working on and we'll be discussing with our lobbyist in our meeting in December. They will be here that day, both Zoom-wise and in person, to talk to us about our local county platform. So hopefully we will look at that and address it. But when you have a couple of platforms from various different state organizations with you, which I included in this workshop, and all I was going to say about that is you'll note there's nothing really directly about CTE, because I find sometimes in my investigation, and Dr. DiPillo and I have talked about this often, when I call around the state and talk to so many board members, I say something about CT and it's like, what? Remember when we were looking at changing our name to Suncoast Technical College, I called around to see how many had done that, because it became that, Negron, Senator Negron was not interested in mission creep, as he called it, so he wasn't interested in that. So everybody was doing it on their own, and I called a number of districts that I knew had just voted on changing their name, and I said to board members, did you do X, Y, and Z? And it was like, no, I don't believe we have. So it's not something that's on everybody's radar, and it needs to be. So thank you very much for all you do for our kids.
Thank you for supporting it. And if you need any data or information regarding that, I have plenty.
Well, I know that our technical college has been on the forefront of our agenda for is it 12 years I've been here? Or 10? 14, something like that. But we rebuilt our North County Center, and then we totally built the one down in South County ahead of schedule, because we did get support from the community and also from legislators that helped us through that. What are the numbers? Are there enrollment numbers, what we expected down there?
In Northport, we currently have, out of that number I gave you earlier, 188 students currently enrolled. Last year it was 231. So that could be COVID, but the numbers do grow because we have programs starting coming November. Our start dates roll, and so as they graduate, they fall off, and then they start again.
Well, I know we were looking at going on to phase 2 down there
Right.
also.
Right.
And there was some talk about a truck driving school. I mean, I don't even know if that's needed anymore now with these self-driving trucks, which kind of scares me, but.
We need a green light to say that this is the time, and then we can get the right people on the table to pick the programming. And once we do that, we can talk more about it. But right now, I think we're in the 24-25 school year plan for we call it phase 3. Phase 2 was combined with phase 1 when they added the culinary and
That's true, that's right, the culinary.
Yeah, I know. I keep calling it phase 2 too, but I was corrected. It's phase 3. And I think there's some money put aside for 24-25.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is the board attorney discussion. Dr. Asplin?
Yes, as you know, our current attorney, Mr. Hardy, will be retiring, and we will be looking for another attorney. So at this time, I think I'd like to turn over to Mr. Hardy, if you'd like to just fill us in on where we are and what we need to do over the next couple of months.
Sure. Really, the board needs to make a couple of different types of decisions, and I've tried to give you at least some information to help you make those decisions. I will certainly be as involved in the process as you would like me to be, but I also don't want to overstep into that, so I'll be guided by what the board would like from me. My suggestion to you is that first you come to a consensus on how you would like to have legal services delivered moving forward. There are certainly a number of different models in similar sized districts around the state, meaning do you just want to look for another outside firm to do all the things that I currently do? Do you want to do what I'll use shorthand, the Manatee model, where there's an in-house staff attorney who's employed by the district, and then also an outside law firm that is the general counsel to the board, or bigger, it's typically somewhat bigger districts, but have more than one attorney in-house. That may include the school board attorney as well as one or more staff attorneys. So I think that's the first kind of level of discussion you want to have, because once you decide on that, then you can decide on who should fill those roles. And if you're hiring an employee, there's a somewhat different way to go about finding that person, as opposed to if you're putting out some kind of RFQ or something for an outside lawyer. You may be doing both those things. So that's all I'll say about that at the moment. But my suggestion to you is figure out how you want to approach it, and then we can talk about the details of how you find the right person or firm to fill those various roles.
Bridget?
Thank you. I'm glad you brought up just the structure in general, and I know that this has been something we've talked about in the past, and the reality is there, and you had identified a series of the multitude of things that really go across the board's requirements in various areas of specialization. And trying to find, the jack of all trades and master of none, I would say, when it comes to that. That's why a question of the value of an in-house staff attorney. I will continue to do some due diligence, but do they play quarterback in that sense that you've seen an in-house staff attorney shuffle and then having a board attorney, or?
Well, I've never functioned in that in that environment, but my understanding is that typically if you continue to have an outside general counsel for the board, that's the person that would be sitting with you, responding to your inquiries, dealing with a number of board level type issues. And then if you have the staff attorney, that person is typically dealing with what I'll call kind of the day-to-day issues of helping staff with contracts, perhaps helping with employment issues, not necessarily litigation, but employment issues, helping with public records type issues, the day-to-day grind of staff work, which I do some. Obviously, the school board staff does a great job with that. We've worked together for a long time, and the people who have been in those jobs for a period of time certainly know a lot and do a lot, and sometimes call me to kind of confirm what they already know. So I know that Manatee has an in-house staff lawyer as well as an outside general counsel. I can't tell you every line of demarcation over who does what. I will tell you, and that's one of the reasons I tried to explain to you how many different people are doing things. I mean, there is no one person who can do everything, either simply because of time, for one thing, but also because of expertise. So if you were to replace me in kind, and just another outside lawyer, that person is going to have to get help. Now, that may be partially from within their firm, but it may also be partially outside, depending on what level of expertise there is. But even if you have an in-house lawyer, whether that's the only lawyer or whether it's the staff attorney, that person, again, can only do so much. There's only so many hours in the day and only so much expertise you can expect anyone to have.
Right, and that's where I was going. And one thing, as the board continues this conversation, I'm not saying I'm privy to either one, but because, to Mr. Hardy's point, is there are so many variables of time and also specialization. I also know that when we had this discussion in the past years ago, not about him leaving, but when we actually quantified, we've had a very good deal. I think hopefully we'll find that's the case when we all seek out another alternative. But just quantifying the cost and then the cost benefit. So that's just something I'll be looking at. And Mr. Hardy, I'd be remiss if I said I am very sad to see you go, but so incredibly grateful for your years of service and counsel.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm not going anywhere just yet, though.
Jane?
Well, I've been, looking at legal services for some time now because I had really been concerned that we had grown to the point that we needed perhaps to have two different legal counsels representing us, as Mr. Hardy said, the kind of things that are relative to the school district staff and superintendent, and then the other, which would have been, working for the board. Many districts in the state have now gone to that model. I personally am against in-house. Why? Because of the burden factor associated. And I never did ask Mitzi what our burden factor is, but I bet it's more than 40%. And then you quantify having a lawyer in-house who has to be trained and do all the kinds of things you have to do to keep your profession in the education arena going. And then you have to have a paraprofessional, not an assistant or someone that we have who's worked on other things. I mean, that's in itself. So, it becomes, I think it grows. And personally, I think that, we've been well served with Mr. Hardy, and I think the outside is the way to go. If we choose a large enough firm, maybe they will have some of these different pieces and parts in it, general and litigation, investigating. Maybe there would be different people to make that decision. I gave you all a document that was multiple pages, which was something that a law firm had created for Escambia County 4 or 5 years ago. And that document really talked about, some of the benefits of in-house versus outside. And based on what I received from that, I really have come to believe that we really need to seek outside counsel. And of course, we don't have very much time. We can't choose your replacement like we would choose the tires on a bus. So we might have to have a request for, some type of a proposal and have a presentation like we did when we were looking at internal auditors, something of that type. We have two different policies, one the legal counsel for the board and one the legal counsel for the superintendent. So I was just going through that, and it's pretty scant, but I looked through your documents Mr. Hardy, and appreciate those because that really kind of gives us a good understanding of where we've spent money, what we've spent money on, and who's represented us when those issues came up. So and that would be my my concern and my wish is that we would still continue with outside.
You mentioned something about the burden factor. Could you explain?
Burden factor is fringe plus overhead. Is that point that, in other words, you pay how much does an individual make with us and their salary, and then how much do they get in bennies, and then how much is the overhead, the desk, the office space, all those kinds of things that we generally have. That's burden factor.
Thank you. Mr. Edwards?
Yes, I want to just start by saying that having watched the board meetings over the last year, I appreciate what Mr. Hardy has done to really keep the district afloat while we were looking for Dr. Asplin. And I can't thank you enough for all of the good work that you did and your expertise to keep everything moving as well as it did. So thank you very much for that. The second thing is I just want to point out to you about Mr. Hardy's commitment. I was elected on a Tuesday evening. Went to bed about 11 o'clock, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, because I get up at 4:30 to row, at 4 o'clock in the morning there was an email from Mr. Hardy advising me that I was now under sunshine laws and gave me a quick lowdown. So his dedication and his care is well appreciated. And to that point, after talking to Mr. Hardy and making several phone calls, his expertise, his knowledge of the school district, his knowledge of education law is going to be very, very difficult to replace. So having said all of that, I will tell you that my first inclination is to agree with Mrs. Goodwin that it needs to be an outside consideration. I did ask to look at some of the numbers, which Mitzi and Mr. Hardy prepared for us so that we had a sense of where these dollars, what columns they belong into. And if we were to consider what you refer to as the manatee model, the in-house things that I could see would be real estate and some employment issues, not litigation, and contract review. But to what we talked about with burden, it wouldn't just include that person's salary and benefits. There's secretarial, there probably would be paralegal. And my concern on the bigger side of that is then there's in-house creep. Do we need another person? Do we, we need this done? Let's hire another person. So I'm concerned about that getting away from us. So my first take on this, although I'd like to hear what other board members have to say, I'm kind of leaning in that direction of staying with an outside firm and looking for the kind of firm that would have a multitude of services along with the expertise that we're looking to fill.
Karen?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Brown.
Push the button.
Thank you. I want to agree I also see that outside legal counsel, based on what Mr. Hardy's been able to provide, is, for me, been ideal from my perspective as an educator in the system and a community member. I don't necessarily see the need to restrict it to one large firm with multiple venues of attorney expertise, but definitely look as outside counsel being the choice, and really zoning in on what that particular counsel can provide us in objectivity and steering us forward and accessing expertise that we need amongst those that would be the best to provide it in our community and in our region. Thank you.
What would be the next step in and looking at getting an outside counsel? I mean, do we have to do an RFP or I mean, I know how you hire somebody, but this is a little different.
Well, you don't technically have to go through any particular process as far as like the procurement process for legal services. That's an exception. My suggestion to you would be, and I know Ms. Brizendine is here and may have some more information. I know I've shared at least one thing with her. She may have found lots of others, but my suggestion is if that's the direction you want to go, that you put out some type of request for, there may be a better word for it, she probably will correct me, but request for qualifications to say, this is what we're looking for. These are the types of services we're looking for. Tell us about yourself, how you would provide those services, at what cost you would provide those services. Get those in, evaluate them in whatever way you deem appropriate. And then, I don't remember which of you said it, but then you probably want to shortlist a couple of firms that look good to you and have them in and talk with them. And obviously, there's got to be, in my opinion, there's got to be a point person within the firm who is the person who will be sitting in this chair. So that's the person you need to really get to know and hopefully establish some rapport with. It takes time, obviously, but that'll come. But find out who that person is, and then discuss with him or her what other, what is that person's area of expertise particularly, and what of these additional services can they or their firm provide. I'm in a small firm. There's not a lot of things that happen that I don't do, or I go outside, and that's why I brought you this list. And I think that over the years, for example, on the real estate work, we've had the Williams Parker firm doing the real estate work literally since, when my senior partner became the general counsel in 1986, he was still in the Williams Parker firm. But when we left in 1989, they continued to do the real estate work. So, and that I think has proven well. Now you may hire a firm that can do that in-house. I don't know. That's just one example. But certainly, I don't think there's any firm who's going to be able to do all of these things. And I think we've got a pretty good roster of special counsel, if you will, who help with various areas. And to the extent the new lawyer and the new lawyer's firm isn't going to be taking those over, I would certainly recommend stick with the people we have, at least for the time being, and you and the new general counsel may change that over time, but there's no reason to have to reinvent that, at least at the beginning. So there is a good stable, if you will, of lawyers who assist me and who assist the board in various areas. But I would think you would want to see who's interested out there. This has not been something that's been put out there for decades, literally. I don't know how many people will be interested. Maybe a lot, maybe a few. You need to find that out. And then cull it down to a reasonable number, bring those people in. Similar, I guess the most recent time we've been through this is when the board hired Kroll to do the review of the equity policies. That's really kind of a similar process to that is what I would think would be beneficial.
So it would be the board that would be making the decision?
Absolutely. The board directly hires two people, the superintendent and the lawyer. So certainly you want, I think, the superintendent involved and knowing what's going on and providing his assistance to you through that, but it is the board's decision as to who to hire as their lawyer.
Well, I think we'd also might need some of your expertise when we're out there telling what it is we're looking for and how many hours can be expected and those kinds of things. I think is important too, because some of these things I really can't answer.
Sure,
and you would.
And again, I'm happy to help as much as I can. I also want to be conscious of not overstepping my bounds with that. But Ms. Brizendine is here. I know she was asked to be here. She may have some more information. I don't know. I don't mean to call her up if she's not ready, but she she may have some thoughts, and I can certainly work with her if the board's direction is to put out a request for something, for services, I can certainly work with her, and we're not reinventing the wheel here, other districts have done this, to come up with a document to get you people who are interested.
I would say probably, like you said, the latest one we did was the one for the consultant for the equity, where we sent out the request for a letter of interest. What we would do is we would go ahead and drop the documents. We would have Art and you review it, exactly what you're looking for, put it out there, give them a certain number of days to go ahead and send questions back in for answers. Then what we would do, similar to there, you had 14 people responded. You met as a board, took it down to 3. We had them come in, do presentations, and then from there you decided to go with Kroll. We could do something exactly similar to that, which is what Art did send me the documents from Indian River, and there are some other out there that are using that same type of process.
Thank you. Bridget?
Yep, no, I would concur with everything you just listed out. I think that's what we need to do. I wanted to confirm the timeline because we're going into the holidays, and also we're, confined by pub sunshine. So by way of meeting and being fair to getting, highly qualified, interested parties, again, don't know how many that will be, but if I would agree with Mr. Hardy would help draft whatever those documents are, put them out there, request for qualifications or interest or however you want to say it, ask that it include a rate structure, because not always when you do an interest or qualifications do they, but I think we do need to have some sense of what their firm or that individual would be. I think if it's because we would be dealing with potentially a firm, but it's really the individual who would be applying, so being a little bit different than from the Kroll consultant standpoint, because normally they put that team together. But I would think, and I would defer to you on this, but the information, what questions can we ask? Because there is a substantial investment into that individual, their expertise, and their ability to work and help govern, help guide the governance of the board. But then back-ending the timeline, and Mr. Hardy, I know you said you make yourself available, but I think it's only fair to you to say when you are planning on to officially retire, if you will, let's work backwards. And I think, can you confirm what time that was? To January?
The end of January.
End of January. So that gives us, I think, a decent amount of time to put that out there, get us back in, shortlist it, and then have the goal of, I'd have to look at the calendar, but early January, have that decision done so that any of the transition time, so that there's not, I don't want to overlap, but I think that, again.
No, and I'll certainly be around so that, when February, presumably, if we're working backwards, you can officially hire someone at before the end of January, maybe your second meeting in January. And
Okay.
They can take over either immediately or at the beginning of February, doesn't matter to me. And I will certainly do everything I can to help that person be successful.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's if we can work back from that timeline, I would think that Ms. Brizendine and I can get a document together for you to review at your December. There's only one meeting in December,
That's what I was-
believe,
the other-
December 8th, to review. Hopefully the board, we can get that to you in advance.
Yes.
To look at. You can approve it on December if it's 8th, and then that can be put out.
And that's enough time if we're doing December. That was my worry, that we have limited meetings and such. And so because we don't meet, having that drafted and getting that out there as quickly as possible to optimize the response and scheduling and whatever, the next meeting is we would have to approve the
Dr. Asplin and I have talked about scheduling a workshop in December, December 8th, before the meeting, and so that we don't just vote on it, that we'd have time to discuss it and have an understanding of what we're doing and answer questions. And I think if we can get something out there and vote on it on December 8th, get it advertised, and then perhaps the first week that we're back in January, we'll have time to perhaps even start the interview process so that we can narrow it down, bring the interviews in, and hopefully at our second meeting in January, make the determination. So are we kind of agreeable that we're looking at an outside firm? Yeah,
Just worried about the time. That's my only,
okay.
I think we would be fine time-wise.
okay.
If Mr. Hardy and I work together to get you those documents ahead of time. Yeah, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, we can work on that to get you, because I think that's, I realize Thanksgiving's in there too, but I think that's 3 weeks before your next meeting.
Right.
So we can get you something to look at. If you obviously individually take a look, and then if on the 8th at a workshop, we have a conversation about it, we can make whatever changes to the document that the board wants, then you can give us the go-ahead on December 8th to put it out. That can be out on the street, if you will, for a couple of weeks to give people the opportunity to respond. And then when January rolls around, perhaps at the first meeting, you can make your cuts.
Yes.
On the
Yeah,
5th.
welcome.
And then
And then the
then we'll
19th is when would we do a short list? That's what I'm trying to.
well, maybe on the 5th, do a short, get down to 3, and then you may
Have to do a
want to
special
schedule
meeting.
a time, a special meeting to interview people.
That's
I
what-
think
that's-
that's what happened
yeah.
with the Kroll group of
Yeah.
people. And then make a decision at the meeting on whatever the second meeting in January
The
is.
19th, and that would be timely from a selection standpoint.
I will work with Dr. Asplin, Art, and staff to get that timeline together and bring it back to you at the next meeting. Mr. Edwards?
The only thing that I'm concerned about, as Mrs. Ziegler is the timeline. And the second piece, based upon my conversations with all of the phone calls I've made so far, is that, as I've said, his expertise, Mr. Hardy's expertise in education is I'm concerned now that we're not going to have a plethora of people applying, and that what we're hoping is that is a list of people that we're going to interview, and it might be one, and I'm not sure that that's going to be enough. So what I'm going to be asking for us to continue in our discussion as briefly as we can, what a contingency plan would look like if we're not ready to make a decision by Mr. Hardy's retirement time period, what that contingency plan would look like. Is there somebody or is there a recommendation of attorneys, firms that we would be working with until we've made a selection? As we get further into the discussion of the document, I guess it's maybe a list of expertise and qualifications that would make the most amount of sense. And then is that the lead person who would refer the other attorneys or the other firms as we need, or would we be, as a board, asked to make those decisions along the way? I guess that's some of the things I'm a little concerned with, and this contingency plan, as I said, I'm not sure we're going to get a whole lot of people, a lot of firms and attorneys applying.
Well, I can tell you how it's worked in the past. That may or may not be the way you want it to work in the future. But I have typically brought in other lawyers to help with various things, whether it's real estate or intellectual property or ESE. If it's been a really big issue, then I've specifically brought that to the board and you've approved that. If it's for kind of smaller things that don't reach the threshold of amount of money, I've basically hired those people on behalf of the board. I would suggest to you that that's worked pretty well, at least from my perspective. I don't know about from your perspective. I think that's worked pretty well. So that's a way you can do it. As far as a contingency, the only way to know who you're going to get, what responses you're going to get, is to get it out there and see. And we'll just have to work through that.
Mr. Hardy, I know, like, if you're putting it out there as a position, you'll get people who they'll want to transfer in, and we won't necessarily have to look for somebody just from this area, because we could look for people who are attorneys in other counties. But when you're asking for someone to be an outside attorney, you would probably want that person to be nearby so that they could come and join the meetings, and you wouldn't be paying for travel and all of that. And I think to some extent that might be a little more difficult to fill.
Well, I think you're right. I think you're right. There is an outside counsel for Manatee County, and I have no idea if any of these people are interested. I'm not suggesting that, but there's an outside counsel for Manatee County whose office is in Bradenton. There's an outside counsel for Charlotte County and other smaller counties who has an office in Charlotte County. Obviously, there's with only one school board per county, there aren't lots of us around. I know that some firms do some traveling, and obviously if you're going to have somebody who's more distant, you're going to have to deal with, and are people getting paid to travel or not, those kinds of things. But I think there's really no way to know what kind of response you're going to get until
Or there might be a local firm that would be willing to bring somebody into their firm.
Sure. And there are local firms who do other governmental work that is not the school board. So other governmental work is not the same as the school board, but there's certainly overlap. The Sunshine Law, the Public Records Law, there are lots of things that are the same, but a person's going to there's going to be a learning curve. Frankly, there's a learning curve for me every day, and certainly after every legislative session. But I will say that, and maybe I shouldn't admit this, but the staff here helps me a lot with the legal stuff too. In their particular areas of expertise, they go to their continuing education, they get statements from the Department of Education, and we're able to work through a lot of these things together. And you're fortunate, very fortunate, to have such a great staff that they will be a big help to whoever my replacement is, helping him or her kind of learn some of the nuances of education law. So,
You haven't bought any plane tickets yet for, or cruise tickets for February, have you?
no, I would have liked to, but circumstances do not allow that.
Okay, Karen?
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. I, too, agree with Mr. Edwards that even though legal counsel is such an important role and the window is short, as Mrs. Ziegler has noted, and even though we did exceptionally well in our superintendent search in a relatively short window, I, too, think at some point we need to consider a contingency plan, and I just want to put it out there that it would be ideal if that contingency plan, perhaps Mrs. Brown was alluding to, included you, Mr. Hardy, to keep our momentum at its highest quality until we arrive at ideal legal counsel.
Well, I appreciate that. And what I've learned over the years in many contexts is the job expands to the time allotted. So I really am looking to move on with my life. If you tell me that, we need a couple extra weeks and we really can't make the final decision until the first meeting in February as opposed to the last meeting in January, of course. If you tell me we need until next July, then I'm going to suggest that's probably not going to work for me. So, the district has been the biggest part of my professional life. I'm not going to just, run out the door. But I do want to encourage the board to use all deliberate speed.
Thank you. Jane?
Well, I'm just going to say, we're not that far from Tampa, and there are a number of law firms in Tampa that might look at this, and Fort Myers. When I looked at that initial report, that was an attorney in Orange County talking about Escambia and also citing Osceola County. So, lawyers will travel these days, and I know several in town who are all over the state. It would be ideal if they're here, but, I think one of the things that we need to look at is their capacity in a law firm to do a myriad of different things, maybe not one attorney as much as having the capacity to do a lot of the things that we do. And we may be surprised by who would come back with us and say that they're interested. Yes, educational law is specific, but it's not that large a scale. I mean, the book is getting thicker and thicker, as we all know, our statute book, but take, for example, Leonard Dietzen, who lives in Tallahassee, and he, represents Suwannee County, which is almost in Lake City. And so he's their board attorney, so he comes back and forth all the time. And I don't think we'd want to get somebody from Tallahassee, but there are people that do move around the state, and I think we'll probably may be surprised with who comes forward.
Well, and I think we've seen too with COVID that we don't always need somebody in person. We can start Zooming. And, maybe we can get a cutout of Art and have it sit in the chair.
Oh, nobody needs to see that, Mr. Brown.
Okay, Bridget?
Thank you. So, no, I agree. If we don't have a hard stop, we probably won't ever let you go. So, I think we can. My only question was, so we get it out December 8th. Right, that's the date. And then we would come back and reconvene on January 5th, selection/shortlist by vote after we review, I guess, potentially a workshop. And then we potentially could have a special meeting to interview those shortlisted ones. And my other question was, because it's an individual, again, not so much the firm, and it's been, I have not been through a general counsel interviewing process, and I don't think anyone on this board has, because you've been part of this team for so long. Are one-on-one interviews appropriate or inappropriate or allowable? Because there is, I will tell you, I've watched some other school board meetings and been aghast about the behavior that I've seen general counsels do at board meetings. So I mean, truly. So more power to you on your demeanor, particularly in very challenging circumstances. So I'm just curious is that kosher? Is that, any thoughts on that?
I would think at a minimum, the board would want to interview the person who was, in the public,
right,
as a group, the person who would be functioning as general counsel. If that person believed there were other members of his or her firm who were going to be not the general counsel, but integral people to the board's representation, they might want to bring them.
Okay.
So that you've had, they're in that kind of situation, they're selling themselves to some extent, so they're going to bring the folks who they think will be helpful in that. I don't see any reason why, as a legal matter, why the board members individually could not interview the general counsel. You do that with the superintendent. It's, a similar kind of thing. So that's up to the board, I suppose.
Yeah, I think we'll look at that and go dig further into it. In the December meeting, we'll try to bring something to you all. We've got 7 minutes left on our agenda, and we've got all these administrative topics we thought would take an hour. What we're going to have to do is narrow that down and touch on those that are the most important. Dr. Brennan, Dr. Asplin, do you have some that you feel are more important than others at this time? Let's take them in order.
I know that, for instance, our meeting sessions and so forth, I know I have something I wanted to say about that, but that could certainly wait till another time. The platform for the consortium, I think Ms. Goodwin really wanted to touch on that, so maybe we should have that discussion and come back to the others later.
Yeah, these agenda reviews and the times, we were making some discussions about perhaps changing that schedule for next year. So if you write it in your calendar, you might want to, use erasable ink, or you can easily change it on your calendar on your computer. The proposed legislative platform we probably need to discuss.
Well, there are two platforms that you have here. One is from Florida School Board Association, the proposed legislative platform, which is a draft, and you can see what the four components are here. This has already been approved by the Legislative Committee and the Advocacy Committee of FSBA, and will be moving to proposal review and approval by our Board of Directors on the 4th of December at that meeting. So I wanted to know if you had any thoughts or you were okay with that, and not everyone is a member of FSBA, so I don't think we have to vote on that, but just kind of get a nod as to where we are on that. But it's also good to have that to talk about our own platform that we'll be discussing at our next meeting. The second one is the Greater Florida Consortium of School Boards, and this is our priority, again, legislative priorities, and it's a 3-pager with some text and dialogue about this in it. And for those who don't know, the Greater Florida Consortium are the counties that are around the coast, starting with St. Lucie, working its way down to Miami-Dade, then back up to Monroe and on to Collier, Charlotte, Sarasota, Manatee, and Pinellas counties. So we equate to about 50% of the legislators, 50% of the funding, and 50% of the students in the state of Florida. And we cannot go forward with this. I have a meeting scheduled for the 10th of December, and we can't go forward with this unless I get a nod from our board that this is okay to go forward with it.
Do we have any questions on the concern? I think it's pretty much the same as what we had last year, but for our new board members, and we probably need to, talk about this now, the Florida School Boards Association represents all 67 counties in the state, and they usually have been the association that went to the legislature for issues that were in general for all school boards. Then there are some smaller school boards associations like rural counties, Central Florida, and the one that we are a part of is the Greater Florida Consortium. Like she said, it has the most students and all of that, but it also has property-rich counties around the area, which is another issue that we look at as we are in the association. I think you might want to make a decision if you want to join both of those with us and come to the meetings. We are fortunate that Jane Goodwin here is president chair of both of them this year, and she didn't have anything to do, I think.
Well, I would just mention that we are all a member of the consortium because we pay one membership for all of us, and then we pay individually into Florida School Board Association.
And the Florida School Board Association in the first week of December usually meets up in Tampa, and it's a joint meeting with the district administrators or superintendents. This year it's going to be online. I think.
Oh boy, yeah, we're going to have 2 full days of a conference, everything from where the lobby is to the exhibit hall. So we have to upload everything ahead of time. It's a whole different.
So you will have to let Kathy know if you plan on attending that remotely so that she can sign you up. Are they having the new member orientations at that time too?
Yes, we're having new member training, first day of the conference.
And I would definitely encourage you to join that. Bridget, are you still a member of the consortium of the school board members? I'm sorry, I forgot the name of it.
The Florida where it's been
dissolved?
Yeah, that's just transferred.
Okay, well, I hope you join us in the FSBA or the consortium to put that through. And then we also are looking at potential legislative issues that we can discuss today. Do we have the thing about
we have that. That is our platform for last year of our countywide platform, which we'll have to discuss with our legislative delegation. Probably, I don't know, have you seen anything, Dr. Asplin, on that? I don't know what the date is, but this is just for our review so that when we're here on the 8th and Vern Pickup Crawford is here in person and Megan and Ron LaFace are here by Zoom, we can kind of talk about and get our platform together with them.
And we want to add the CTE issue on here?
Yeah, I was going to say, so we're doing this on the 8th? Jane, the Sarasota? Okay, yeah. Yeah, and if we pull the one, because we had the language from before, and they did some work on it, and they can refresh our memory where it went on that from the CTE.
Yeah.
I actually did have a question, just on the, just because as I was reading through the FSBA legislative platform, it had something about the Medicaid expansion for services provided by the school district that are reimbursed by Medicaid. We don't need to answer that question now, but I'm curious what services currently exist. And that may not be a question for you. I can certainly ask.
It isn't a question for me, but I know we have some.
So I was curious to get more clarification, but I can defer to staff. And
I think Sonia would have that answer.
Very good.
Mr. Edwards?
As the new kid on the block, deferring even to Mrs. Rose, who's been in our district and knows a lot more. I've read over both of these platforms. I have agreed to be a member. I'm already signed up to be at the event in December. So I can best say, in order from time purposes, just to let you know that I've read over both of these legislative platforms, and they seem to be fine. I'm hoping I'll learn more as I go through. FSBA has also been helpful to me as a new school board member. Since I'm not allowed to talk to any of you, I'm allowed to talk to some of my counterparts from other school districts. So if that helps, I'm ready to give you my nod.
Well, may I just make one more comment? When we look at FSBA, we look at the 30,000-foot level. So if it does not apply to every district in the state, then it does not go on the FSBA platform. When we look at the consortium, it really reflects those larger districts and the coastal districts that are around the edges, and some of the personal problems that we've had in legislative leanings in the past. And some of these larger districts, Miami-Dade, for example, and Palm Beach, they have a huge staff of governmental affairs folks that really have been very helpful to me, but they're also good partners for us to work with. So it's been a really good experience for me. I don't know what's going to happen legislatively this year. We're quite concerned about the executive order and how that will go forward and what we will do. But I know most of the committees will not be meeting until January. They have gone up and been sworn in this week, but everyone is very concerned about COVID. So all access to meetings, as we would have done in the past, are a big concern now.
Okay, Karen?
Just quickly, if it's appropriate for the Sarasota legislative platform to consider in preparation for the next meeting, the ability to have retired teachers immediately be eligible to substitute versus wait a year.
Exactly.
Because I see that as one of our greatest needs, if this is an appropriate place for that, so folks see it prior to the 8th decision-making.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something we've talked about, and yeah, this is where we need to put it. We've asked, have you had a chance to talk to Tallahassee yet to find out if it's actually prohibited to bring them on as a sub?
It is right now.
It is. Yeah, so we need to readdress that issue, and I think thank you for bringing that up. The work session and meeting times, we're going to discuss more next month. One of the things we're looking at is the hearing of citizens. Somebody suggested that we separate those that are here for an agenda item versus those that are here for comment or something. I also suggested that perhaps we need to identify on the card what school, whether they're a staff, staff or a student or parent, and what school they're looking at, so that we have more information on, so we can follow some of these people or go back to them. I think that might be helpful to add that to the card. But it was suggested that we separate those and have those that are here to talk about an agenda item versus those who are talking about a subject. Truly, Dr. Asplin, before you came, and we didn't have this issue. We would have hardly any cards at all. So, I mean, I don't know what it is you've brought with you. But when we are getting this many, we probably ought to, separate that and look at that. So that, because I know there's, usually, at least once a year, there's some issue that comes up that we have, and I think that makes something. Ms. Goodwin?
Well, I was going to say that I've done some investigating over the last few days, and one district that I spoke with, they have people speak on the agenda in an unlimited fashion at the time that we have it. Then they follow that with 30 minutes of people who want to speak on anything, and then they cut that off. The additional people that want to speak at the end of the meeting, so that we get through the rest of our agenda, because a lot of people really are out there in viewer land, want to see what we're doing. They want to see the total breadth of our board meeting and our agenda items presented. So they're doing the rest of that then. Remember that Miami in September had, what did I say, 600 and then it went to like 1,200 people to speak, and they recorded it and they played it over Wednesday right on through, playing it until like Sunday. I mean, I've never seen something, but that was when they were going back to school and had some issues with parents and so forth. But that's one model that we could use. Some others use the model of agenda items only during the board meeting and then the others at the end. But I think there's several things that we could do depending on, what we would like to do. Some of them have trespass issues, so now if you get thrown out of a board meeting because you've acted in a certain way or you've been asked to do something and you or don't comply or whatever, you don't get to come back on school property for a year. I know Marion County has that, as does Volusia. They just enacted it, I guess, like last month. But, those are just some things that can keep the thing going smoothly. And I think that, I just would hope that things will die down a little bit. I really hope so.
Well, yeah, I would hope that we wouldn't have to go to trespass issues unless there was a danger there. Ms. Ziegler? And Dr. Asplin, you'll be after her.
I guess for clarification, are we discussing this now, or are we deferring it to a next workshop? That's why I wanted to make sure, because I do have to.
That's what I was going to mention, would you like me to put together maybe 2 different plans of what a board meeting would look like, and then bring that to you, and then we can discuss them, and you can tell me what you want to do and how you want to put that together?
I think that would be a good idea. Because, I think we can go for another couple of minutes, and then we need to stop.
Okay.
So if you are looking at that, I did look at other models. I know that we've spoken about this a couple years ago, just about the structure for public comment. I agree with Mrs. Goodwin on, I think it makes sense to allow that public comment the first portion being specific to agenda items, and that card needs to identify what agenda item they want to speak with. I would be very hesitant to ask for more information, as I believe it's imperative that we always have open doors for people to petition their government, whatever the topic is. And if we're getting too identifiable onto what we're asking, I worry people would be fearful that they won't come forward, and we don't want to deter that.
All right.
I'm sorry. And then at the end of it, having it just an open public comment makes the most sense, and therefore they're really, if they're...
Yeah, let's talk about this more at the workshop in December, because we literally have 5 minutes, and I'm cutting us off. The board procedures we can talk about then. Also, the logo replacement behind the dais, we're going to have that match our... We don't have a picture of it yet because they haven't, so we do have a picture?
It's that logo, yeah, it's in the bottom corner.
It's the great palm tree.
Yeah, that, although I kind of like that gold, but that's fine. The board audit committee update. Is that something you can do in 2 minutes, or what is it we want here?
I don't.
Or can we push that off until
I think
December?
we could push that off. I know, Ms. Goodwin, I know that you were in that
you were there.
particular meeting, and I think, is Mitzi still in here? No.
No, she left me to carry
Okay.
this torch. Mitzi and I met this morning, and we are getting in touch with our internal audit organization, CRI, to have a meeting in December with our audit committee to discuss plans going forward. Here we have an issue. Well, first of all, we want to do things, we want to probably start with construction because Paul Pitcher's going to retire. Unfortunately, I've heard that and I'm disappointed, but we want to do that before Paul, so he would be first. That department would be first, and we've, audited them quite frequently. So, I mean, I guess they got all of their wares out from previous audits. But basically, what we want to do is try to have our internal audit done about the same time the Auditor General comes from the state to do the audit, so that our people in the departments don't have to do this a couple of times and waste their productivity. So we're trying to coordinate our internal audit with the Auditor General, and we'll start that process the beginning of the year, but we will have them come with a plan for us, because remember, this is their plan. We're not internal auditors. We're there to oversee for the board, so we save the board time and effort. And the internal auditor gave us a pretty generic plan in the original proposal, and now we're asking them to come in and give us a proposal of specifics. So that's what we will do in December.
Great. We will have the Florida School Boards Association meeting and the new member training. And then after that, the December 8th meeting, we're going to have a workshop in the morning. Right now, we've penciled in at 10 a.m. We'll see what other things we might have to do it. But at that is we'll talk about meetings, work sessions, and how they go through. And I think you'll have a better understanding. I know that Karen and Tom, you've both been sitting at our meetings. You see how they work. But you might want to know, well, how do I get something on the agenda and some of those things? And we can talk more into those things at the next meeting. And with that, we're going to stand.
I just have one more comment.
Member comments.
One more comment.
All right.
I just want to mention to all of you that you have to have 4 hours of ethics training by the end of the year. I've already taken mine. I did that on the night of the election. I went on the superintendent's site, FADS, and took the course, and it really is well done. It's really more of a manual that you're reviewing, so it really didn't take me 4 hours to do it, but I would encourage you all to go on FAD's website and to do that. Don't do like I did one year. I waited till I think the 31st of December. Nobody was around, and I had issues with transmission, so don't.
Any other member comments? Okay, we are going to break for lunch, I guess we'll adjourn the workshop and have lunch. We will come back at 2:45 for the reorganizational meeting and our 3 o'clock board meeting. We can have lunch together. We can talk about the weather. We can talk about we can't talk about the election. We can't talk about religion, and we can't talk about board business. With that, we stand adjourned.